You have your interpreter form a little table here to help you manipulate your flippers, okay? So every single time, here's what you do. Start out with your plus 4 1/4 in the front and your minus 3 in the back. Now I'm gonna tell you about this, then we're gonna read about it, then I've got a flow chart for you. So we're gonna do the same thing 3 different ways, and hopefully one of them will make sense to you, okay? So now, the patient's sitting down, the interpreter is verifying chief complaint. What are you doing? Plus 4 1/4 and minus 3, right? Okay. What do you have? 1.25. What do you have up here? Minus 1.25. If the complaint is poor distance vision, if you assume the eye is healthy and the complaint is poor distance vision, then what do you know? You know one thing. No. You know the light is not focusing on the retina. You don't have a clue where. It might be in front or it might be behind. But I'm not smart enough to look at you and say, I believe you got a long eyeball. I believe the light focuses in front of you. You know, I'm not smart enough to do that. I don't think y'all are either. So all you know is that the light is not focusing on the retina. Remember what we've gone over 14 times? If the eye is healthy and the light focuses on the retina, then the patient sees clearly. If the light focuses here or here, the patient does not see clearly. So if the complaint is poor distance vision, you know the light is not focusing on the retina. That's all you know. Right? Everybody good on that? Okay, good. Please don't say they need minus for distance, because that's right most of the time, but you cannot depend on it. Okay? Okay, so the patient sits down, chief complaints verified, poor distance vision. We're assuming the eye is healthy, so one thing do you know? The light is not focusing on the retina. Where is it focusing? I don't know. All right, okay. So we've established one thing. The light is not focusing on the retina. So we need to do a screening test to determine where the light is focusing. We do a simple screening test, and that question is answered pretty much 100% accurately. And that simple screening test is, what does the interpreter tell the patient? Look at his eyes. We're going to give you 2 choices. Tell me which is better, choice 1 or choice 2. Okay? What have you got here? Oops. I'll change. You got a plus 425 and a minus 3. So what do you have? Plus 125, minus 1. Look at his eyes and tell me which is better. Choice 1, which is plus 125. Choice 2, which is minus 125. If he chooses minus, now what do you know? Exactly. If he chooses minus 125, what he's telling you is, he's saying my eyes are healthy and the light's not focusing on my retina. Okay, that's what he's telling you when he says poor distance vision. Now, you're showing the plus 125 and the minus 125. If the light is focusing inside the eye, what's the minus 125 going to do? Push it back toward the retina. What's the plus 125 going to do? Pull it farther toward the cornea. So which one's he going to choose? The minus. The minus is pushing it closer to the retina, so he's going to choose minus. Now we know he is myopic. Now, what if the patient chooses the plus? Now what do we know? We know that the light is back here. The plus 125 pulled it closer. The minus 125 pushed it farther away. So which one's he going to choose? The plus, the one that brings it closer to the retina. So that simple test tells you. You don't have to guess anymore, you know. If he chooses minus, he's myopic. If he chooses plus, he's hyperopic. Now, assuming he chose the minus. So now we know that the minus 125 brought it closer to the retina. But how much minus does he need? How myopic is he? How strong a minus lens do we need to put out here to get him seeing his best? Well, let's find out. So, sitting here, looking down there, compare plus 125 and minus 125. If he chooses minus, now we know what? He's myopic. But how myopic? We don't know. Okay, now compare minus 125 and minus 175. If he chooses minus 175, what do we know? He needs more minus. The minus 175 pushed it even closer to the retina. So then you lock those three together, reach over and grab the 2. Compare minus 175 and minus 2. If he chooses minus 175, what do you know? The minus 175 put it right on the retina, and the 2 pushed it beyond the retina. So he's going to choose the minus 175. If he chooses the 2, he's saying, I need more minus. The 2 is still pushing it closer to the retina. Lay these in your interpreter's hand, switch here, grab the 50. Compare 2 and 250. If he chooses minus 2, you are done. Whenever he chooses the weaker of the 2 choices, that's what you prescribe for him. So compare 2 and 250. If he chooses 2, you're done. If he chooses 250, lock those together and grab your 3. Compare 250 and 3. If he chooses 250, you are done. If he chooses 3, drop those in here, switch hands, go 3 and 350. If he chooses 3, you are. If he chooses 350, grab your 4 1/4. 350, 4 1/4. If he chooses 350, you are. If he chooses 4 1/4, drop those here, switch hands, 4, 475, 475, and 5, 5 and 550. Just keep going up till it chooses the weaker of the 2.
Do you ever go 375?
I don't. I think that's close enough.
That's close.
350 and yeah.
And 425.
Yeah, that's close enough.
After a while, he's going to start to tell you they all look the same, too.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, exactly. And if the patient takes me up to 3, I drop back and punch. I say, does he really understand the system? Let's do it again. I start all over again. Plus 125, minus 125. If he takes me up to 3 a second time, I think the validity is a lot higher, and I go ahead and prescribe it for him. Okay? Now, what if the complaint, what if you do this, what do you always start out with every single time? Plus 4 1/4 and minus 3, right? Compare plus 125 and minus 125. What if he chooses plus 125? Now we know what? He chose plus, so he's telling me the light is focusing behind my retina, and that plus pulled it closer, so I like it better. So start going up in plus. Compare plus 125, plus 175. If he chooses 175, 175 and 2. If he chooses 2, 2 and 250. If he chooses 250, 250 and 3. Go up in plus in half diopter steps. If he chooses the weaker of the 2. The weaker one will put it on the retina. The stronger one will bring it inside the eye. So he'll see better with the weaker. So go up in either plus or minus till he chooses the weaker of the 2 choices, and that's what you prescribe for him. Okay? Now, a couple slight complications, but nothing major. My criteria, well, not for distance, if the patient chooses plus 125, then I'm thinking, do you really need glasses, or do you just want some free glasses? Okay? So then I do what's called a malingering test, a faking test. Okay? What's the first thing I do every single time? Plus 125, minus 125. If he chooses minus 125, now what do I do? So he chose minus 125, he's myopic, so I start going up in minus, right? So minus 125, minus 175. If he chooses minus 125, now I've got to scratch my head. Does he really need glasses, or he just wants some free glasses? Let's do a malingering test. What do you have in your other hand? 0.50. Okay. Now compare this. Compare minus 0.50 and minus 125. If he chooses minus 0.50, no glasses needed. If he chooses 125, you give it to him. You've gone above 125, and he took you to 125. You've gone below 125, and he keeps bringing you back. You've bracketed 125, and he keeps coming back to it. So that's what you're giving. So the point that when you ever go plus or minus 0.50, that's a malingering test. You're trying to determine if he really needs glasses or not. If he chooses 0.50, unless you have a compelling reason, I suggest not getting him any glasses. But if you're in Kenya and a Muslim walks in and he refracts minus 0.50, I'm going to give it to him. But typically I would not do it. Okay. So remember the nuclear power plant. This is simple stuff. Okay. What do you start with? Plus 125, minus 120. If the complaint is poor near vision, what do you start with? Exactly the same thing. Every time, plus 125, minus 1. The only difference is if the complaint is poor near vision and the patient does not have a cataract, that's the only exception to the rule. If the complaint's poor near vision, you can almost always go straight to plus, unless the patient has a cataract. If the patient has a cataract, I'll tell you why in a few minutes, he may need minus for near, but that's the only exception. So if you do your quick screen, black pupil, 40 years old, go straight to plus. Yes, sir?
Dealing with close vision, what do you have them focus on?
Whatever is culturally appropriate. The needle and thread, the rocks with the rice, the Bible verse, John 3:16, about 16 inches. So have them look at a near point. Complaint's poor near vision, interpreter confirms it. And what are you doing in the meantime while he's sitting down and getting settled? Plus 125, minus 125, plus and minus 50, and the 2 is in his hand, your interpreter's hand. And once you get in sync with your interpreter, you won't even have to talk to him. His body language will tell you. He talks to the patient, grabs a Bible, the complaint's poor near vision. If he starts pointing toward the patient's eyes, the complaint's poor distance vision. So once you get in sync with your interpreter, y'all can you don't have to say a word to him. You can do it all just by body language. Complaint's poor near vision, the interpreter grabs the Bible, tells him to look right there, compare the two. What does he compare? Plus 125, plus 175. If he chooses plus 125, my criteria, what's the age for presbyopia? Yeah, 40-ish. My criteria is 30 years old. If the patient is 30 or older and you show him complaints poor near vision, plus 125 and plus 175, if he chooses plus 125, he's either presbyopic, early presbyopia, or is going to soon will be. So I give him the plus 125. If he's less than 30, I say, do you really need glasses? You just want some free glasses. So then I do malingering test. And what is that?
Bracketing back down.
0.50. Okay, you chose the 125. So how about compare these two? Choice 1, which is 0.50. Choice 2, which is 125. If he chooses 0.50, no glasses needed. If he chooses 125, I give it to him. So every time, exactly the same process for distance or near. Compare plus 1 for distance, do a screening test for myopia and hyperopia, then go up in either plus or minus till the patient chooses the weaker of the two, and that's what you give him. For near, if the patient has a cataract, what happens to the lens? We've talked about it gets cloudy. Oftentimes it also swells, and when it swells, the patient often becomes myopic. You may have heard stories of the 70-year-old that could suddenly read the paper with no glasses. He started developing a cataract, his lens swelled, he became myopic, and then he's like me. I can read up close because of the myopia. So potentially, an older person with cataracts could need a minus. And the reason is, if his complaint is poor if his complaint is poor near vision, he has a cataract, and he really needs a -4 for distance. And what power did I say was normally the highest power you need for bifocal? 250. 250 is typically the highest bifocal you're going to need. So if he needed in bifocals a -4 and a +250, when you combine those, what do you get? -150. No, a -4 and a +250. And a +150. So potentially, a person with cataracts may need a minus veneer because of the cataract-induced, it's called a myopic shift. So if the patient has a cataract, his complaint's poor near vision, then what do? Do your screening test, +125, -125. If it chooses plus, what do? Go up in plus, +175, +125, +175, 175 and 2, 2 and 250, 250 and 3, 3 and 350, on up.
So would that be true of the severe myope as well?
The severe, yes, the severe myope's going
With
to,
or without cataract?
yeah, the severe myope's going to be able to see fine up close. You might have to bring it up real close, like a -8. He can read at 5 or 6 inches away. Now, that's another good point. If a plus and going from +125 to -125 is how much of a difference? 2.5 diopters. That's a pretty big shift. So most patients can tell a difference. But if the patient is really myopic, you show him +125, -125, he's going to say, well, he can't tell the difference. If that's the case, then he probably has a high refractive error. Then say, okay, try +2 and -2. Try +3 and -3. And at some point, he's going to say, oh, yeah, that's a little better. Then you say, okay, he's severely myopic. Compare 3 and 4 1/4. 4 1/4 is better. And then start going up. 4 1/4 and 475, 5, just keep going up. And so if they can't tell a difference between +125 and -125, either they've got some sort of problem